It is Monday, the 13th of May, 2019, and with us in the kitchen of the Martin Perry house is Hallie Heath, who grew up here in Powell. And listening to Hallie and recording her are Alan Miller, Sherry and Stan Carmichael, and I'm Carol Wilhelm. We'll all probably be asking some questions of you, Hallie.
All right.
So maybe you would like to give your full name. For instance, is Hallie your given name?
Yes. Hallie Lawrence Heath.
Hallie Ann Lawrence Heath.
Yes.
All right. And you are what age?
85. Born 1934.
Okay. Wait, what date in 34?
April 28th on Route 42. My parents lived on a farm along Route 42, and they had interesting stories to tell about the bootleggers and the people coming from the south going to Detroit. And I remember my father saying corn was 25 cents a bushel and he didn't have the first quarter. But the farmers were lucky because they could have their own food, grow it, and all that. And it was always on weekends. Family from town would always come out.
Town was?
Delaware.
Okay.
Or
like
maybe,
how many people?
Well, there was, I wouldn't have any idea. It was a large family on my mother's side. Aunt Callie and Aunt Kit, Aunt Lucy. I forget how many girls there were.
What were your parents' names?
Harold Lawrence, and my mother was Anna Taylor Lawrence.
And where did they come from?
My father's family actually came from Upper New York.
Really? Where? Do you know?
Yes, I have to think about it. Marcellus?
Oh, near Syracuse.
Pardon?
It's near Syracuse.
Yes. And on up farther too, I can't think where that was. Some of them from Vermont. And then my grandfather's family, they settled in Columbus. And his father worked for the United Fruit Company in Panama. And Grandmother Lawrence would take the 4 boys, and they would leave on the ship from New Orleans sometime, New York, Baltimore. And I had a card that showed the ship of the United Fruit. It was a gorgeous thing. But I can't imagine her going down there wearing white.
Mm-hmm. To live or visit?
She would visit.
Mm-hmm. With the boys?
With the boys.
So is this turn of the century or in the 1800s? What
Or
are we talking?
it had been in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Father was born in 1899 also. So I was born there, and then I don't remember that. The only place I remember is they lived on a farm on Home Road where the elementary school is built. And then they moved down. I started school, then they moved down to Home Road. It's a house, I think it's still there. I haven't been there. It'd be the last 2-story house on Home Road before you get to the railroad. But I started school at Hyatts, and at that time I went at Hyatts. Then when they bought the house on down, so I went to came to Powell, and May Duffy was my first and second grade teacher. She was my mother's teacher.
About what year do you think this was when you started to school?
Well, I would have been 6 years old. I was born in 34,
1940.
40.
Okay.
And she was teaching.
So is that why Charlie ended up spending his senior year in Powell?
Yes. Both Charlie and
So-
John graduated from Powell.
Okay,
Because of
all
that,
right.
that division right there.
It was just
Yeah.
really close to the line between the two school districts.
Right.
there, huh?
And then I went back to Hyatts in the 7th grade. And I told my mother, I said it was the worst thing you could have done because Hyatts hates Powell. I know, but I had a rough time. I mean, it wasn't easy.
What, was there no friend or who lived near you that had that same situation of being
There
transferred
was
back?
not any girl my age who lived around me. It was
Large.
all boys. I was a tomboy.
And large farms.
So tell us the names of your siblings and kind of the order.
Okay, there's Harold Taylor. That's Taylor. He's deceased. Charles Francis, John Edward, myself, Jerome William, Roderick Allen, and Susan.
Those that are living are you, Susan, and
Rocky.
Rocky. And I have to interject that there are many Rockies in this family. And they all lived on Stites Road at one point, right?
They still live there. Well, John and Josephine was, we call him JR, so we can keep that part straight.
Okay.
Josephine said she never dreamed she would be back in the Hyatts and all that, you know.
Josephine was
John.
JR's wife.
No, Josephine was John's wife, John Edward.
Okay.
So then my brother Rocky married Catherine Ball, and they had a son. They named him Roderick Allen. That's Rocky. And so there's 3 Rockies on Hyatts Road.
Stites.
Stites Road.
Stites.
Yeah.
I get my roads all mixed up.
Yeah.
But you never lived on Stites.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Well, do you want to share any stories after you had to go back to Hyatts in the 7th grade and how
No,
cruel
it was
seemed?
just
Was really difficult.
it was,
Did you know why there was such antagonism between Hyatts and Powell School?
I have no idea, and I often wondered why.
Could I clear that up?
Do you know why?
I do. And it all had to do with the school system.
Oh, it was before the school system.
Well,
Yeah.
Hyatts and Powell had shared as Liberty Township
Yeah, I
The-
knew that
the
part.
high school. Okay, but there was antagonism before that, you think?
Oh, yes, there was.
Okay, I don't know then.
That's
But-
why
but
then
it
my
was-
mother thought I'd be better off at Hyatts, which I told her that was a poor thought.
Do you think it goes back to 1900 when there was or maybe 1910 roughly, when there was a dispute about funding the Powell School?
Well, that's what I was getting at, but she said it was before that.
Oh, that,
1900? I think you were talking later, weren't you?
I was talking later.
Oh, well, no, when the high schools, before there were 11 township one-room schools, and then as they wanted to start high schools, Powell and Hyatts joined together as Liberty Township, because both of the towns were part of Liberty
Right.
Township, to decide to build a high school. And before the buildings were built, the students from both the towns shared going either to school here in Powell at various places, such as the church or the little post office or wherever they could find rooms. And then part of the time they went to Hyatts, and they went to the Redmonds Hall and everything. When it came down to choosing a site for the Liberty Township High School, it was chosen in Powell. And Hyatts was not
Sure.
happy with that, and they pulled their support, their financial support, out of that. And so they determined that they would build their own. Powell built theirs and had the first graduating class in 1912.
Now, was that the school over here?
Yes.
Now, they did have a school on the other road.
Yes,
on
they
Liberty.
did. South Liberty had it was not a one-room school. It was a two-story brick building that
The Haywoods.
incorporated
Yeah.
1 through 4 in the bottom floor and 5 through 8 on the top floor. But we're talking high school now.
Right.
And so when Powell built theirs, Hyatts was a little behind behind the ball with building, because they had originally started to agree to build with them. So they gathered their funds, and they were able to graduate their first class, as far as I can tell, in 1915
Okay.
or 16.
Don't know when the class graduated.
Yeah.
You know when the building opened.
The cornerstone says 1915.
Well, then that'd be.
And in 1914, we know they were beginning to gather funds. So I'm assuming that they probably got the building built and maybe graduated in 1916, their first class. I'm not sure. But that is, to my knowledge, where the rankling came.
Well, then when they formed Olentangy, that was a mess. I mean, it was terrible.
You mean the people didn't?
Powell did not want it.
The Shanahan Road site.
Yes. The first Olentangy High
Yeah.
School.
Mhm. They threw rotten eggs. It was terrible.
Really? Huh.
So
I did
they
not realize
literally
that.
threw rotten eggs? Really?
It was a bitter.
Who did they throw the eggs at?
Oh, I can't think. I think probably the Shooties.
Well, how did the Hyatts people, how did they feel about the Olentangy High School in the mid-50s?
They were for it.
They were for it.
See, they never did. They never seemed to get along
I know that the sports teams were quite rivals.
because I mean, I just don't understand it. But growing up, I was in Powell more than I was any place. Because of the great aunts, I would come down here and stay with Aunt Lucy. I stayed at Aunt Clara's. Aunt Lucy's house is a big, large house beside Hall Drive,
Hall Street.
Hall Street.
Hall
Because
Street.
she was married to
A
Dr.
doctor.
Talley.
Right. And I was always amazed. See, when he died, she kept his office was the first. You go in the front door, and the first room to the right was his office. And he kept all the medicine, all the bottles, all that. She kept everything the way it was when he died. And I was always fascinated with that.
Sure.
That was the original founder of Powell's house, Asa Gordon Hall. And then later, after Dr. Talley, Dr. Bennington was in that building for his office in Powell. He also doctored in Worthington.
Well, you know, supposedly they built around a log cabin in the back.
There was, I do know that there was an original building, and I understood that it was torn off when it was expanded at one time. Maybe there's some of the original there. I'm not certain about that.
Well, I know Aunt Clara's one son brought a log cabin, a little one, and set behind their house.
That was yes. Are you talking about Kirkpatrick?
Yes.
And yes, we know about that. That came from west of town, where now the zoo has their
Right.
safari area, and it was owned by a black family.
Yep.
And it was moved there. Yes. Oh, I'm glad to have you corroborate that.
So Clara Kirkpatrick.
Who?
Clara
Clara.
Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
And what was her husband's name?
Leonard. There was a Leonard.
Well, that was, I think, the son.
Yeah.
Maybe I was thinking so was the father, Leonard. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for a lumber company and was never home. And then Jerome Kirkpatrick And then there was the daughter, Irene. And then that kid and Uncle Orange lived on Liberty Street. You know, the house where John Wright lived in?
Yes.
Well, that was that kid and Uncle Orange's house.
We just recently received an antique display case from that house, the Wrights.
Right.
Yes, so we were in there not too long ago in that house.
Last
So
summer.
that was a relative of yours as well.
Right.
Do you know if they built that house or did they simply live there?
I would think those houses were all built before they settled
Yeah.
there.
Because we're talking about the 1930s,
30s, 20s.
20s and 30s. Yeah. Okay.
And then Uncle John had the mill there was a huge mill by the railroad out there.
Yes.
That's what he had.
Yeah.
They
Might
had
have
coal, they had a lot of stuff there.
It was basically a feed mill?
Probably.
Grain.
Mill?
Big grade by the railroad. And
So it would have been on the east side of the tracks.
it was on this side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when Uncle John died, young John took over. My mother had two families because,
Is that right?
well, really, because my
older
oldest
ones.
brother was 12 years older than me. Charlie was 11 and John was 9. And I came along. And boy, being the middle kid is something else.
And a girl
Yes.
with those boys.
I can remember when my mother said, she kept telling me I couldn't keep playing with the boys. Well, I never did listen to her. But I remember my father talked to me. And I can remember being so mad. I could feel the heat from my feet go up to my head. But I obeyed.
Yes.
I mean, actually, I was never paddled. Probably should have been. But
How many kids lived near you when you were growing up? Within, say, half a mile?
there was Carlos Rule. There wasn't. No.
He was killed in a farm accident, wasn't
1950. The tractor upset on
he?
him.
Yeah. They lived, their house was right beside the Elsie
Yes.
camp where
Right.
you lived. Was
Yeah.
that when you were living there
Yes.
there on Home Road?
Mhm.
What about cousins who might have been girls? Were there not many cousins? It was
Well,
mostly-
there's only one, and that would have been Mary Rutherford. And she lived at Aunt Callie's with her mother, and there was Carl and all them. So you would go down, I would ride my bicycle. She was older than me, so I'd ride my bicycle up to Stites Road and go, and they were on the corner of Hyatts Road at Stites.
Yes.
Mary Rutherford, was that Carl's mother?
No, his mother was Lucy.
What do you remember about growing up during World War II?
Well, I remember my oldest brother graduated in 1940, joined the Air Force. And then John was drafted before Charlie. See, Charlie was blind in one eye.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. They took him into the service, they put him in the medical corps. And then he was sent to Germany. He was with the 45th, I think it was the Oklahoma National Guard. And he was wounded by friendly fire. And what saved his life is it hit his dog tag.
Oh.
But apparently I remember that the Army came in their big truck, sort of greenish colors. to tell my mother he was missing in action. And then they came back and said he was fine because he ended up at Dachau cleaning out those furnaces. And he didn't Charlie never married till he was 50. And I remember Mike and Gail were running around in the yard, and my dad and Charlie and I were sitting around talking. And an airplane went over, and out of the clear blue sky, Charlie said, you know, in Germany, if the children heard an airplane, they went flat on the ground. And then went on with another conversation. He never talked about it until later years. And he told about when he was wounded, that it was a German captain. He had showed Charlie his wife, the children. They were very friendly with each other. He said if it had been the SS troops, he would have been dead. I really think I drove the tractor. Well, you're talking about when the war was going on. My father worked in Columbus at Jeffries, and father would plow, and then Jerry did the disking. He was 2 years younger than me. So I'm trying to think. I had to have been 10 when I started driving the tractor. And Jerry was 8, and he did the disking. And Mother worked on the baler. And there was a man up the road, he was a 4F, he couldn't get into service. And he helped. And we muddled through it. And John was in the Pacific on Luzon and Manila and all that. When he was coming home, he had malaria. And my parents were informed that he was AWOL. They had taken him directly from the ship to the hospital.
Communication.
And he had a rough time for a while with that. But then I drove the tractor for John and Charlie. We did custom baling.
What would people say if they saw an 8-year-old driving a tractor today?
Yeah.
I know. And during the war, we would go out and pick the milkweed pods because they used that for the parachutes.
Oh, yes.
I would go out and try to sell war bonds, and I won a prize. I won a book of the stamps. I gave that to my youngest son.
The farming that you did, was it the livelihood of your family before and during the war?
Farming was always what we did.
But your father worked at Jeffries.
Yes.
Did you ever guess that Powell would look like it does now?
No. No. It's coming down the road, they changed Turkey Pen. I think it's too bad that they changed all the road names. I really do.
Can you tell, because we're on tape, what the name of Turkey Pen is today?
Rutherford. Yeah. My mother walked to school too.
From
From
home
yeah, from
Her home road.
down to
To
this
Turkey-
school here.
Turkey
on
Pen.
Powell.
Yeah.
Oh, to Turkey Pen, yeah.
And then she went to Powell.
Sure.
But don't we have a photo of Anna
We do.
standing in front of the horse-drawn school
Yeah.
bus?
Well, I don't know about standing in front. We have a picture of Anna sitting in the back row. That's actually the picture that's on the wall upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the back row looking out the window when they took the photograph.
Well, my brother and I worked for Rocky in the middle 60s baling hay.
Oh, wasn't that enjoyable?
Boy, it was, it was hard work, but the best thing was eating lunch with with family. Oh my gosh, we had such a big meal in there, you just wouldn't think you'd even be able to get up from the table.
And who prepared that meal, Stan?
Her mom.
My mother.
Yeah.
Anna.
Yeah, they,
You know, that's something that's really gone away, but
Yeah.
that was universal. That was just
Yeah, the big-
amazing.
big meal at lunchtime.
And breakfast was always big.
Do you remember much about the Depression?
Not really. I don't remember until I think we moved to the house on Home Road. I remember sticking my hand in the corn sheller.
Ooh,
I was about 3 years old.
you still have your hand?
Yeah, it was pieced back together. Dr. Donaldson was the doctor. Mother's
Was he in Hyatts?
name Powell.
And Powell, okay, sorry.
I think his name was Donaldson.
I don't recognize that name, I don't think.
Well, you're probably right. I just
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know.
Nobody.
But he said he didn't know if he could save it. But he pieced it and it's not bad.
How about that?
So someone must have saw you and stopped the machine?
Now I screamed. What happened is Father had told me not to do that. And I put the corn in, I thought, and I remember that. I had to grab the corn. Well, that was too late. It's on Mother's lap, and she had a pan of water, and I had my hand in the pan.
Were all the roads gravel in those days, except for maybe Liberty Road and Home Road? Were they?
Now, they were all paved.
They were paved.
It, well,
Even
up until, let me think, when would it have been? 56? Bean Aller from Liberty Road to 315 was called Mud Road.
Mud Road. Yeah, and it was gravel.
It was
That
mud.
There were plenty of mud holes, yeah. But it was, that's when we moved up to Hyatts in
Yeah.
'56. So that was the only gravel road around the neighborhood in those days. But I was thinking probably, so when do you think the other roads got paved? They were paved as early as you can remember, huh?
I can remember Home Road. I used, when they would come by with the black, what do you call that?
The gr-
The tar?
Pavement.
the-
Oh, I just hated the smell of that.
Oh. Yeah, they would put down the layer of tar and then the layer of gravel over
Yes.
top of it, yeah.
And
Okay.
even back then, during the war, you never saw a car because unless you were going to work or made a trip to town, you didn't drive because gas was rationed. But I was always told never to get in a car with anyone. And I was going down the road walking, and I had to be about 9, 10. And it was a beautiful dark blue car. And it stopped, and the man, very nice looking, dressed very nicely with pure white hair, wanted me to get in the car. And I can remember turning and running as hard as I could back home. But you know, you should warn the children because maybe I would have if I had never been told. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned that you graduated. I think you mentioned you graduated from Powell.
No.
Then? Oh no, you went back to Hyatts.
I
Right. So when did you graduate? What year?
didn't graduate.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I ran off with the school teacher.
Well, I was just going to then start asking you about how you met your husband.
That was my first husband.
Maybe I better not ask any more questions.
He
Tell
was,
us what you feel comfortable
Yes.
telling us.
he was
Sure.
12 years older than me. And I was, it lasted 6 years. in this day and age, he would have been in prison. Every school he went to, he had a girl. And I ended up in Elgin, Illinois. And I had an uncle who lived in LaGrange, and one night I just made up my mind that was it. Told him come pick the children and me, and that was it.
Yeah.
And you returned to Ohio?
Mhm.
So you had a few children at that time? 2 children?
Michael and Gail.
Okay.
Mike lives in Bellingham, Washington. He's an artist. Gail lives in Tennessee. And my son John lives in the Shores. He just retired this year. He worked 33 and a half years for PPG.
So, your husband, Mr. Heath, was he from Hyatts also?
No, he was from Delaware.
Delaware, okay.
And his dad was a farmer. But Richard was killed in 2000 on his motorcycle. Man ran a stop sign.
Hard.
It is, but you have to forgive. I mean, it's, I remember we went up to the court in Marion. And I know John was, and it was upstairs, you could look down. And I knew he was down there waiting at the door. And this man came in, he was 80 years old. And his daughter was with him. And the assistant prosecutor wanted to put him and send him to jail, and we said no. But the regular prosecutor said, well, he had a hard time with the assistant. But we told the judge that we didn't want him punished. It was an accident. John stood up and he said, this man did not get up and say he was going to do this. He said, one thing I thought he could have left off, he says, there isn't a one of us that hasn't coasted around the stop sign. It's a good thing I was sitting down.
So how old was John then? 20 years ago, and he maybe 40 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's 60. He'll be 62 in August. I have 5 or 6 birthdays in August.
So do you have grandchildren?
I have grandchildren. I have great-grandchildren. I'm beginning to think the great are outnumbering the great.
They do. They do.
Happens that way. So you live, as I recall, right next to the Liberty Township, Havner Park, and Deer, what is it?
Deer
Haven.
Deer Haven.
Yeah.
And how has that affected you, or does it?
Oh, I think it's great. But let's see, the house north of me, the farmhouse, is where Mom Hosey and Minnie Taylor lived, my grandparents. And I lived there also when I was married, before we built the house. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother had always told me I could have land to build on. Mm-hmm. So I did. And Mother sold it to Havner in the 70s. She was an only child. And when he died, the family, you probably know all this, they donated the land to the Preservation Park and Liberty. The only thing I have a complaint about is the moles coming from... And the park doesn't have any moles, and they won't tell me what they use to keep the moles out.
Well, just tell them to take care of the moles on your property. You don't need to know how to do it.
Yeah.
Sent them all south.
Yeah, they all come from the preservation side.
Gosh, that's rotten.
Well, the first time when they started, my late husband and I, we did get rid of the moles. He put a hose on the pipe of the car. And we didn't have moles for years. They did the first burning of that. And after that, and then they built that wetland, which I think is idiotic. It's could have used the money a little differently. There's a wetland way on the other side in a corner back there. They could have made that larger.
Farmers try to drain those wetlands, don't they?
Yes, they do. They made a wetland.
Yeah, Delaware County's got plenty of wetlands.
We've got one in our
Yeah,
yard.
we're good.
Oh, I'll tell you, my yard is a mess. They came out and mowed today. And there's some of it they can't even mow yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I have 2 acres. I have the acre my grandmother gave me, and then my mother gave me an acre.
You know, I think I counted 6 siblings, but you got the land from your grandmother. Did the other ones get any land or anything equal?
No.
Okay. That's a good thing. I'm glad for you.
My mother and father gave John and Josephine an acre.
Well, where Rocky lives, there on Stites, wasn't that piece of property,
That's Rocky's.
is that part of the farm there?
No.
Or he bought that,
Rutherford, last name was Rutherford, died. There's 40 acres there, I think. And he has that.
yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about before we began the filming, talked a little bit about some things you remembered about Hyatts, such as, I think you mentioned something about the Lodge Hall or something. Do you have anything you can share with me about Hyatts?
Well, there was a grocery store there. And Gene Hack had a store. You knew that.
Yes, I read that Gene
Yeah,
Hack had.
farther south there on Liberty.
Was it still there when you moved?
Yeah, just for a couple more years, not too many.
Was it a grocery store?
Yeah, we were
Little bit
there.
of everything.
It
Yeah,
had everything. And he also repaired shoes.
yeah.
And I can't believe people would go in and they want meat, lunch and meat. He would just never wash his hands or anything. We never,
It was
No.
rather primitive.
it was very friendly.
Well, was it a building built for that, or was it in home?
It was built for that, I would say.
But it wasn't very big.
You know what, this size of this room is what it reminds me
Yeah,
of.
it seemed like
Oh
it.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, can you locate that for me? As far as, was it on the west side, the east side? It was on the
East side.
east.
East side, the house is still there where he lived.
Okay, east side of Liberty Road.
Mhm.
And so north of the school property,
South.
south of the school property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Almost down to pools. Just about.
Oh, okay. You know, that's not where I had that in my head. Okay. Well, that's interesting to me.
Well, let's see that. You know where Jean and Sylvia lived? Hack,
They built the new brick
the brick.
ranch that's there pretty close
Excuse
right
me.
there.
So when you look at that, the next house going south is the white two-story is where Gene Hack and all of them grew up, and his dad.
I see. Okay, now I know. Okay. The Joneses had their store to the north of the school.
Yes,
Yeah. Right
Okay.
at the edge
All right.
of
yes.
school property.
All right.
Yeah.
And you were talking about Jessie Brown and her store, which was by the railroad track.
Yes, on the north side, the last house.
Okay.
She
That
lived
helps.
up above it.
Okay.
Was there real competition with these small stores?
No, the big one, the one that is the lodge. It was the only one there. I don't know how I imagine Gene Hack had been there a while though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it'd been here a long time.
I
We
think
lived
it'd been there quite a while because he started out repairing shoes and I was trying to think if he sharpened things. I can't remember that.
I don't know either. But there was a little, the competition was that from Jones' store, you could go in there and get a bottle of pop for a nickel. But if you walked all the way down to Gene Hack's store, you could get it for 4 cents.
And what did you do, Stan?
Depending on how much money I had.
Your mother didn't buy it at the store in Delaware, huh? And bring it home in a carton.
Yeah, I don't think hardly anybody bought their groceries from either one of those
No,
stores.
you just did.
Bought your groceries in Delaware. But they had the whatever little odds and ends of things that you just had to have in a hurry, you know, you could get them there, but that was about it.
Pop and candy.
Yeah.
Pop and candy.
Right.
Right.
The kids, Josephine and John, they moved back and they lived in that house on the corner right across from Jones' store.
Who was that?
Rocky,
John and Josephine.
John and Josephine. It'd be JR and Melanie. They would pick up bottles and take over to Best Jones.
Yeah, we did that too. Yeah. Yeah, take the cash.
And what did you do?
Well, they were a lot younger than me. I was married with children by that time.
I don't remember those folks living in. When
They
we
weren't
moved
there that long.
Yeah, I was gonna say Armstrongs lived in that house on the corner.
Yes,
when we
right.
lived there. Yeah.
They weren't there very long. They built out there beside father and mother.
Okay.
Did you ever go to the Hyatt's pond to skate or any of that?
Mm-mm.
No.
Dances. I remember Marianne Rutherford talking about dances. Where were they?
Probably in the school. Square dances. Yes, we used to square dance in the school at night.
Yeah, they were still doing that even
Mm-hmm.
after we moved.
I think it's too bad they tore down all the schools. They could have saved them.
Yeah.
I know my oldest son, Mike, called me one day. We were talking. He said he never realized what a wonderful childhood they had. We lived at the farmhouse at that time. The only thing I wouldn't allow is they could not play in the front yard because the cars at that time the hubcaps had a tendency of flying off.
Yes.
And if you'd see how far some of those went. But they had the whole backyard, they had the woods. They spent all their time out, but I look around and look at these children today, they don't have any of that.
Society has changed where both parents work.
That's right.
The mothers aren't there to keep an eye on.
I think where it started downhill, really, which I think it's okay to work. Well, my daughter-in-law works. She's getting ready to retire from PPG.
Yeah, I think another contributor is air conditioning. So kids.
Yeah,
Well, what about computers and cell phones and
All
all
the
of
above,
that?
but
That's,
Well,
kids would rather stay
television.
inside where it's cool.
yeah.
I mean, some programs. I was watching, I don't know what station it was, but it was something and there was dancing. And the girl was doing a beautiful job. I didn't see anything wrong with it then the boys came out. But you know how the young boys used to, Michael Jackson and all of them, how they put their hands down. she was doing that, and I thought to myself, that is such a no-no. I mean, I will say this, I drove the school bus for 30 years.
Oh, you're still alive.
I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah, that's great.
I worked for a dentist, I worked at a clothing store in Delaware. I didn't like any of it. I think I might like that. I love to drive.
30 years, wow.
Yeah.
And I
After
didn't
all.
have any problem. The kids and children were good. I contend if you treat them respectfully, that they will. And I tell them what I would tolerate and I wouldn't. I had a radio, that helped. But now I enjoyed it.
I assume you drove from Olentangy
Olentangy.
district.
Take you to new streets and new developments and
Hmm. I had my own area. It was up all around me. Then I switched, came to Powell. And the retreat, I had to retreat. And the people were very nice. In fact, some of the parents came out and thanked me and told me that that's why they thought a school bus should be run. But now it's so different. I mean, they're not allowed to touch the children or anything.
When did you stop driving?
I was trying to think. It's when my husband retired. And I told him I didn't want to retire. He said, that's fine. Well, he's so home by himself one whole winter. So then we went to Florida. So I was trying to think. 98.
so you had just 2 years.
Then I had
together.
my knee operated on too. I didn't like Florida.
What part were you in?
We were around Lake Wales. Close. Trying to think. We really weren't. We were about in the middle. It was the same distance to go either way to the oceans.
I was picturing it there. Yeah.
And we had a camper, not a camper. It was a fifth wheel.
Oh.
Now I liked the fifth wheel, it was big. But he had his heart setting on them. They stayed there permanently. And it was so small. And if I dropped something, the woman next door would ask me what I dropped. It's a wonder, I'll tell you. I don't like bugs.
I have to read a quote from this interview with your brother Charlie and his wife Donna back in 1998. She commented that Charlie always says that this land always raises far better houses than it ever raised crops. That was Charlie's dry humor. And you agree with that?
Yes. I'm pretty lucky, and there isn't too much they can build around me now.
Yeah, the park, having the park. And then Donna said she realized it was time to leave town when she went to the post office and she didn't know anybody. And I can remember Donna often saying, oh, well, heck. And that's what she said, this little town is gone. So how do you feel about that, statement? Do you concur? Or since you didn't live here, because Donna and Charlie lived for a while right across the street
Yes.
here from the Martin Perry house.
I guess my way of thinking, it's too bad, but you have to go with the times. If you don't, you're going to be left behind and awfully unhappy. I mean, the people who live in the past, most of them I've run into are very unhappy.
You're right.
You have to go with the times whether you want to or not and just enjoy.
And Donna and Charlie, I think they felt that way, even though they moved from here.
Yeah.
to Stites Road, of
Yeah.
course. You know, I was always impressed that they weren't bothered by the new folks like me coming in to town.
No,
So you all were raised with that open mind.
Well, we all came from somewhere
Well,
back in our family.
I get upset with people talking about the immigrants. We wouldn't be here if our ancestors hadn't come here.
And didn't you mention earlier that your ancestors? What country did your ancestors come from?
Germany and England.
And I think it was before we began the recording when you were talking
Well,
about.
my mother's side is German and my dad's side is English. And there is a difference. We call my mother's parents mom and pop, which always confused the neighborhood because we'd be talking about what mom and pop did. Now, my grandfather, Pop, had glaucoma. He couldn't see very well. Probably couldn't see at all. But anyway, he would drive to town. I would sit on my grandmother's lap, and she would tell him a little to the left, a little to the right. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. We'd go into Isley. She'd either get me a soda, strawberry soda, or the big ice cream is about that tall. She would park him. She'd tell him how to do it. Now, she didn't drive, but she was a good...
Front seat driver.
Exactly, wow.
But of course, how many cars were on the road?
Yeah.
Not too
Not
many.
too many. But
Oh my!
she was a wonderful cook. My mother was too. And my grandmother would always make my birthday cake and angel food cake. And she would beat it,
Lots of
I
eggs.
get a box cake and I would beat it 70 times and I'm ready to die.
You didn't make it from scratch like Grandma?
I used to. Years ago I
You
made.
can buy them now, you know.
Well, I don't really care for cake. I like angel food, that's about it.
Doesn't count.
But Mom had made me this beautiful cake and it had the marshmallow chickens on it.
Yeah.
And then she had put little chocolate drops around it. And my two brothers, Charlie and John, made fun of that cake. I can remember crying. I can remember crying a lot of times. My parents would go play cards. Finally, they started taking me with them. They washed my mouth out with soap. But I remember going, Mother and Dad would play euchre with Uncle Orange and Aunt Kit. And I would sit there, I'd watch the euchre, but then I'd always be staring at this painting. It was a black and white horse, like they were running, and it was a rainy night, like, background. I would just sit and stare at that thing. I thought it was better than being with my brothers. Well, then the neighbors, the Doolin boys would come up to see John and Charlie, and they had a pony. And I always wanted to be on the pony. Well, they put me on the pony, and the pony would go to a corner that was headed towards their home, and I'd sit there until they all came back.
Now, when you're talking about the Doolin brothers, are you talking about Clarence and one
Roy.
of his brothers? Roy, okay.
Yeah, Roy and
All
Clarence.
right.
And then Lee Robinson, he had the most beautiful horses. But I would sit on those, they were humongous horses, Belgians.
Yeah.
And it was like sitting in a big rocking chair. And I was happy just going up and down the field.
Mm.
I suppose we were disking or plowing or something.
Yeah. I think he was the last one that still was using horses to farm around here.
Right. When my sister was born, they had a hot water heater, Lee and Ina Robinson, and that water heater blew up, came up from the basement. And I remember my poor mother and father went over to help take care and do things because Lee wasn't home.
Now, Lee Robinson's, for our sake, their house had been where?
Where the bank is on the corner of Home Road. It would have been down, I'd say where that line fence is, before those other little houses. And back in the driveway.
So Sawmill Parkway and Home Road.
Yeah, it would be east of the parkway.
Yeah, east of the parkway.
Where the bank
That's-
is now.
It's
Or
when you're
about.
going east. There's these little houses, I call them. But there's a line fence there. There's a fence, you can see that. It'd be right in that section.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Roy and Judy Jackson bought that farm, and that's where they lived there for a number of years.
Yeah.
Before they built the other, or moved back up to Hyatts Road.
Hyatts Road.
Yeah.
And then Sue Jackson has sold all her land on Hyatts Road and Stites and all that.
To whom has she sold it?
I think she sold to Schottenstein.
Stites and Home, is that where there's the talk of the new Powell Library?
Yes.
Right, but that wouldn't be the property that Jackson's had. It's a different corner.
Yeah, probably was.
Yeah, they have that.
But all that Stites Road area is
Yeah.
going to be building up quickly now.
And then they bought up the Pearl's land. That's on
Stites
on
Road.
Stites.
Yeah, on Pearl.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the Chickahominy School on Stites? I realize you didn't live in that area, but Charlie often would talk about the little one-room school on the bend on Stites.
Oh, the brick.
Yes.
Yes. It's an attractive place. And there's one up on the corner of Liberty Road and Bean Aller too.
That's
Right.
favorite.
Yeah. At Christmas, it looks like a gingerbread house all lit up these days. But Charlie always laughed about that being called Chickahominy, you know.
Right.
That,
Because it was Chickahominy Road
Right.
for our listeners. And that was a battle in the Civil War, right?
Right, yes. The Orange and over in that section, Berlin. See, we always called it Berlin, but the people who have moved in, it's Berlin. I said, well, we've been killing names since the beginning of time. We used to call Pooch. It's Kermode, but we always just said Pooch Kermode.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And what about Seldom Seen? Everybody laughs
Seen.
about that one too. Yeah.
that always had a lot of wood ticks on it.
A lot of woods.
Where did Seldom Seen get its name?
I don't know.
We've even had speakers in about that, and the consensus is that nobody really knows. It was just one of those little side country roads that was seldom seen.
Okay. And Chickahominy was named after the river in Virginia?
The-
Where the battle
The
was?
battle.
It could have been.
That's amazing.
Or was
I
it?
assumed so.
Oh, were there veterans that came back or something and gave it the name? Because why would they pick that one as opposed to
To any others, yeah.
60
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
rivers?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know that either.
Oh,
unless it be someone from the south that was up here.
That's possible, sure.
Or
That
that-
could have been before the war too.
Something to research.
Yeah.
Because listening to my relatives talk, they would tell about that before the Civil War, that the man who had the plantation, when he had children, he brought them up here and bought land, and then went back home.
huh.
That lived on Stites Road? Are you talking about somebody in particular?
No,
Oh,
it was
just-
all different
oh.
places.
I see. You're just saying that.
But my
yeah.
ancestors knew the ones who came up.
I see.
You may have told us at the beginning, and I just don't remember, but how many generations of your family have lived in the area?
My mother's side would have gone back to the great, I think.
So fairly early.
My dad's side, it goes way back. We have traced it all the way back over to England, back to, I couldn't believe she was able to go that far. But it's amazing. And
Now, who's the she that you're talking about?
a cousin,
Disabled?
Lawrence,
But as far as being here in Delaware County, your family came from, did you say Vermont and New York? And
well, my dad's side did.
Okay.
The Marquards came from Germany. But the Taylors were here a long time before.
before that.
The cemetery over on the river, Scioto River Road.
Be-
What's
Yeah,
that?
what?
By a church,
yes.
yeah.
Aller,
Aller, I think it is
Aller.
Aller
Cemetery.
Cemetery.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
I'd have to wait till the weather gets nice. But a lot of my relatives are there.
Mm-hmm.
They,
Yeah, that was the closest, from what I've read, that was the closest cemetery to Hyatt's. Now, there was
Hardin
Hardin
Lane.
Lane one also.
But it's small.
But those were the two that the people seemed to go to from Hyatt's. I suppose some came to Powell, but
Well, or Liberty Church.
Liberty Church, that
Yes.
was more pioneer.
Well, they always said that Uncle Doc, Aunt Lucy's husband, would not drink water from here in Powell because of the cemetery. Well, the way they were buried, they at one time had cholera,
Cholera. Oh,
and
boy.
he absolutely would not drink the water.
That was
Did he
Dr.
tell-
Hallie.
Did he tell his
Uh,
patients?
I don't know, he probably did.
Well, I don't think we had an outbreak, but
You never know.
yeah, I'd never heard that the cholera had been here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do know that they used to be buried in just a box that would
Right.
rot sooner or later.
But I'm going to be cremated.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat the devil at his
Yeah, we'll see.
before he
again.
gets me.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can remember they used to butcher, and that was, Mother had hooked up a screen over the fire and cooked the fresh sausage. Oh, I thought that was delicious. I'm telling you, I ate so much and I got so sick. I didn't eat sausage until just about a year ago.
Oh, no. It's been a while. Between.
That's too bad.
It
It
was,
was so good all those
oh, it
years
was
you missed out.
good.
Did you help with the butchering?
No, I was too young to do that. We kids were real small.
Well, you had some wonderful opportunities to spend time with older relatives here in Powell.
Mhm.
Was it for weeks at a time in the summer or
Oh, a
shorter
few
visits?
nights.
And
was
neither
just
one
fun.
of those people had children. So
Aunt
you were,
Lucy didn't.
How about Aunt?
Clara, her children were all grown.
Oh,
Now she had a granddaughter that would come up, and I would spend time there. I ran. There was the one Hopper girl and a Nancy Smith that
Nancy Smith.
they lived in the last house before the railroad. On the left side, that'd be south, going that way.
Yes, yeah, right.
Was it? We've traced the one where I told you where they are in New York. There's a whole cemetery of the Lawrences. But when they came from the east, I forget how many brothers there were. So it's hard to tell. They're scattered around.
Have you ever been to that cemetery?
Yes, it was raining. I didn't get out.
Oh, that's too bad.
Tell us again about the outhouses at the school.
I was amazed as a child. Maybe they weren't as long as I thought they were, but I know there were over a dozen holes.
Do you know how many there were in the boys?
Never saw the boys.
Okay.
Never saw the boys.
Never even heard rumors about it?
No.
Did they use Sears Roebuck catalogs or had they graduated to some form of tissue paper?
I think there was tissue paper. I think. I can't even remember that.
I wouldn't remember it, so don't.
I just remember the holes.
So what about lunchtime? You lived further away. They didn't have a cafeteria here, did they?
No, I would go up to Powell, get my lunch
Really?
at Mrs. Weaver's.
Oh,
So she expected children who lived a little bit of distance and couldn't walk to their houses to
Apparently,
come for lunch.
Charlie, I'd see Charlie up there. Naturally, my brother.
Yes. Did they have tables and
Sure,
chairs?
tables and chairs.
Wow. And that's where the lodge hall was?
Up above. There
The
was
lodge hall was above, but Weaver's was the store below
yes,
Craft
Bell
House 5.
Lanster.
right.
And Craft House 5 is in 2019.
I remember it would have been John. I just thought of her the other day. John Kirkham's, his wife's,
Jean
Claire.
Canfield.
Jean Canfield's mother,
Lucille.
Lucille. Her father had died, and he was in the home there at the house. In the
His
casket.
body.
His
when people
body,
visited.
yes, in the casket. And for some reason, there was a girl with me, and I said, well, we should go in and see that and tell them how sorry we are. Because as a child, I went to a lot of funerals. And we did. We went in. But she told my father that she thought that was so nice. I can't even comprehend why I would thought I should do that.
That was Lucille Canfield's
Father.
father. Sharp. Let's
Yeah,
see, his
Sharp.
name would have been Sharp.
Yep.
Was that, and they lived did they live right across the street here?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah, they lived right across there. No, I said I know more of Powell than I do Hyatts, but I was always just all this section of town. My cousins would come. Some of them came up when Vera Darnell lived on the corner where my great-grandparents lived. where my mother was born, up here on the corner, Home Road and Liberty.
Which grandparents lived there?
My great-grandparents,
And that was Taylor's?
Taylors,
It was Taylor.
That's where the Liberty Park is now?
yes.
Okay.
And Vera Darnell then, she ended up with the farm. Well, his two nephews would come up, and then a cousin, on the Taylor side, she would come and stay with Vera. So the four of us would walk down to the old Tangi River. And there's a humongous rock out by that.
Yep.
We would sit there and say what we were going to do. Da 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 da. I forgot all about that rock, but I was driving the school bus. That's what's the name? Taggart Road.
Taggart Road.
And looked over, and I thought, oh, I never thought I'd be driving a school bus when I was sitting there saying what I was going to.
Yeah.
And there was a humongous sinkhole in that woods before you get there. You could throw stuff down like a big log, and it'd come out in the river.
Really?
South of Taggart?
Oh, this was the woods on Home Road. What's that housing development called? No, this is before you get to the old Tangi Caverns. That woods,
Bridal Spur?
Bridal Spur. Well, the caverns have been there forever.
Yeah.
Actually, in some of my reading and research for the Hyatts thing, they talked about, no, this wasn't for the Hyatts thing. This was about Liberty Presbyterian Church area and the school that was there. They talked about for recess, boys would go down and go down into the caverns at recess. Yeah.
We used to go down there as a child. It cost a nickel. And my grandfather Taylor said that the Indians never were in the caverns. He says the Indians would never have gone underground. But they would give their spiel, and we'd stand out there and say, "That's not true."
Made a really good story, didn't it? They made a lot of nickels off of that.
Well, they stopped letting us in. But I can remember riding my bicycle down to on 315 to the swimming pool.
Mount Air.
From Home Road?
Mm-hmm. My sister used to have a fit because she wasn't allowed to ride the bicycle on the road. Because she says, well, Hallie did all the time. They said there was a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever go to Shawnee Hills swimming pool?
Yes, and that's the reason I don't like water. Aunt Lucy would take Mary Rutherford and myself, and some way I fell in the deep end. And that was it.
You had to be rescued?
Yes.
The lifeguard jumped in and hauled you
I
out?
don't remember about that. Somebody dragged me out. And I never did. I love water. I would swim if I could keep my head up. I don't want the water in my ears. Don't want it up my nose.
Well, and you're talking about the deep end. That was the difference between those two swimming pools. Mount Air was shallow all around the square, and it was deep in the middle. But at Shawnee Hills, there was a shallow end and a deep end. Yeah.
Shawnee Hills is still there.
Well, Shawnee Hills is there, but the pool is
It's
all
gone.
filled in and breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
The lot,
The lot that where the actual pool was is just grass. And there is, I think the little police department is down the, whatever street that is, it may be Reindeer, on the right-hand side. And there are some old buildings or some buildings that were there on the left that were behind swimming pool that are still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I spent a lot of summer days there.
Did you pedal your bike there?
I did. I have ridden my bike over there, but I don't think it was as far from Powell to there as it would be from Home Road to Mount Air. Jiminy.
On 315. Good.
This has been great. Thank you.
It has been great. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.